Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the show where pre-show guys, we don't prepare the show to talk football, though. We talk about stadium prices at baseball stadiums because it is too dang expensive, especially when you have to go to one of two New York teams like us. It's all overpriced, Justin. Absolutely overpriced. Just like the baseball rosters themselves. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a show that baseball is not the main topic. It's football. Welcome to the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, coming to you per usual on a weekly basis here on the weekend. It's a beautiful weekend outside, by the way. Slightly cloudy, but Justin, it's official. Summer is here. And you know what that means. We're going to be starving for content over the next 2.5 months. But before we get to the start of next NFL season, we got one last nugget from the National Football League, from the Shield itself, to carry us another weekend. We're very grateful for it. And let's get on to the actual introductions. Of course, as always, introducing you in the weirdest way possible, because that's my goal every week, guys. Iceman Jerry. And joining me is one of my two cohorts of chaos. The other one is... technically, he's working, but we're just going to make a joke and say he's, load managing on this one. Podfather Rick is out, but I got Justin here with me. Justin, how are we doing?
I prefer load management to working, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Always the preferred method to be able to take time off of. For sure. But yes, guys, as you can tell by the episode title, the 2023 NFL schedule is has been officially fully released. It took a couple days and some confusing tweets at the beginning of the week for us to figure things out. Not going to lie. Just to be upfront with all of you, me and Justin thought we were going to get Wednesday Night Football this season, and it's like, when was this?
I was really thrown off. I was like, I can't believe that's something that they just sprung on people like that. Yeah. And then they remade that tweet, and now it's different.
Yeah. I was thinking from the perspective of so who's going to get that package of games? Is Amazon getting it? Is that an offshoot of Thursday night? Is it ESPN? Is it Fox? I was asking those questions, and then immediately this is why Podfather Rick sometimes reigns to sin. He's like, guys, you may want to reread the tweet. So initial confusion aside, we are here to talk about the schedule. We're going to talk about the schedule in a couple different chunks here, because obviously we're not going to go through all 17 games for all 32 teams. So that's kind of what the season previews are low-key for. But in actuality, what we are going to do this week is kind of go over in different sections of what the 2023 schedule has in store for us. We're going to talk about the primetime games. Obviously, that's probably going to take up the most amount of time because you got Sunday Night Football, you got Monday Night Football, you got Thursday Night Football, even though some people would argue Thursday Night Football in terms of but regardless, you got those three different nights of football. We're going to talk about the games that happen on holidays, mainly Christmas and Thanksgiving. NBA, the NFL is coming for you on Christmas Day. But we're going to talk about the holiday games. We're going to talk about the international games, and have any of these international games that by the end of it, will it sour relations between America and either London or Germany? We'll talk about that here. And we're going to talk about any other games that are on our mind. Plus, the start is always important to things, Justin. So the first thing we're going to end up talking about here with the schedule in a couple moments is going to be week one of things. But before we get to that, you may not be here in person, but per usual, in spirit and video format, Podfather Rick is here. But he's not going to talk about, we will have him on to talk about a little bit of the schedule stuff, but we have him doing something else for the people, a special edition of First Sipspressions.
Hey, gentlemen. Good to see y'all again. I want to introduce you to something a little bit here while we're talking about a subspression that I found that I think is actually quite interesting. As you can see, my little pina colada air freshener there. What I want to introduce you to is a concept that I recently just rediscovered, and it's called yacht rock. Now, yacht rock basically is a form of rock and roll that is basically a easy listening rock and roll. And a lot of times you hear it on yachts. I got into this, well, I shouldn't say got into it, I got back into it in about 2021. Went golfing with a few co-workers at the time, and we just listened to yacht rock all day while we were having Heinekens and drinks on the course. It was a really fun time. Well, there's a song on yacht rock called Summer Breeze by Seals and Crofts, and I think it's a really excellent song. So if you'd like to go listen to it, I would suggest you do that, because it's a really nice, slow yacht rock type of song. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because Mountain Dew has released a brand new flavor, which they are calling Summer Freeze. And Jerg will know, because I told him about this in the chat, that Summer Freeze, they market it as a flavor of Americana, which in essence, when you're looking at the label, means that it's basically a bomb pop, or a firecracker pop, if you will, which is the red, white, and blue cherry, lemon, raspberry ice cream drink that everyone gets. Now, I'm curious to see how this is going to taste, because I'm intrigued. I'll give Mountain Dew this. Their flavors are interesting, though, what they try and do. So here we go. Does summer freeze make me feel fine? That's a hidden Easter egg lyric for you Seals and Cross fans out there. Let's see what happens. Okay, so the lemon hits initially, and it's a bit much, but it actually goes down relatively smooth after that. The cherry and raspberry create a nice little, almost like a rainbow ice type of mixture in a way. Listen, if it's only here for the summer, so be it, but that's a really good Mountain Dew. Thumbs up for you, Mountain Dew. Great work, and excellent job capturing summer Americana. Bravo.
As a lifelong Mountain Dew consumer, it's very good. Before I end up leaving New York here in the next couple days, I gotta try to find a bottle of that to take back with me. Maybe more, probably. What?
You know, I've never had Mountain Dew.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Never tried it.
All right, so I'm gonna do the rest of the show solo. Justin's gonna be kicked out. No.
Insulting your culture.
Wow. I mean that's one of the essence of my childhood right there. That's why I'm just shocked.
Never really had it.
Wow, that's utter insanity. Yeah, for me, see, for anyone that's ever watched a show when it's just me and one other person, you guys already know like things fly off the rails here really quick. Like the ideal snack combination for me growing up was a Mountain Dew, a Cool Ranch bag of Doritos, and like a Swiss cake roll. Like that was what, because you get the chip, you get the dessert, and you get the sugary drink that just clogs up your insides 20 years down the line.
I've had the other two that I would have just probably gone with like a Coke or something.
That's fair enough. But
or a Brisk.
I
like my Brisk.
Yeah, I'm not a big iced tea guy, so there we go. so as we learn about each other more and more while doing the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, as Podfather Rick gives us another amazing episode of First Expressions, I gotta say I do love the fact that the Mountain Dew is good. Like obviously that's good for me as a Mountain Dew guy. Do you kind of miss the Expressions where he just didn't like the drink, Justin? Because I feel like those.
I don't remember very many where he likes them. I feel like most of them are like, "Why are you doing this?"
And they're sometimes part of the rant podium, actually. Like he mentions it. So for the fact that Mountain Dew got a good review, that's kind of rare for the Expressions.
Yeah, no, good. It must be a really good drink. I feel like his standards are super high.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, we've made the joke before here on the show. Aside from the first round of this past NFL draft where I ended up taking the Monarchy, usually Rick is the Russian judge between the three of us, where if you and me would rate something like a 9, Justin, he's giving it like a 6.5 or 7. So it's it's one of those things to say the very least. But wow, good to know that Mountain Dew did things right. Speaking of if they did things right, did the NFL do things right when it came to the schedule? That's a transition in the biz, ladies and gentlemen. Me, Justin, and of course Podfather Rick via some vlogs. We're gonna go over, like I mentioned, specific sections of the NFL schedule here in terms of how are the games. Obviously, NFL is king sport. It's very difficult for the NFL not to do well ratings-wise. I know there was like a couple-year stretch where ratings were down, and is the NFL? Mark Cuban was like, the NBA is going to surpass the NFL and all that stuff. No, the NFL is king sport here in North America, like by several miles, really. So we're going to be talking about that. But just before we get to the actual games, Justin, I just want to talk about the concept of this because we've joked about it. It's actually a joke that my sister told me way back. I think I was even in college when she made this joke to me. She's like, even when it's the NFL offseason, the NFL just never goes away. Like it is the sports, it literally never goes away.
And players say there's no such thing as an offseason.
Yeah, there's no such thing as the offseason. And for the NFL, like it makes sense. Free agency and the draft are, big things that take up time, and like for weeks after you could talk about the draft, and of course obviously the three of us from last season and this season we're going to talk about team previews here in month or so time. We're going to begin with that, maybe a little more, but when it comes to even a schedule release, like the NHL and the NBA, just here's the games. Here's like the NBA, it's like what opens the season, what are the Christmas Day games, and like that's kind of it. And does the end of the season matter for anything? For the NHL, there's outdoor games, Stadium Series, Winter Classic, international games that they do a terrible job of, putting all that out there, mind you. But I'm not salty. I am. And then baseball, it's like opening day and then 161 more games until the postseason. The NFL has done such a unique thing where they even make it a opportunity to make money on TV programming based off of the schedule release. So talk about that, Justin. Talk about just the fact that like the NFL is at this stage where it's like we're waiting for even just the game releases to be made official. Like no other sport has that in this country, and it's not even close.
Well, I mean, the hype machine is rolling. You know, they found a way to market year round, which I mean, I'm sure their shareholders and investors and team owners obviously love. You know, the more money there is, the more there is to go, or the more advertising, the more money there is to go around. So the NFL keeps growing, which is I think great. I love the sport. I love watching it. Hopefully, it stays all good. And yeah, I mean, could you fault them if people are going to react this way? You know, you might as well make money off of it.
Yeah, I don't fault them at all. Like I think it's brilliant. I think the fact I just marvel at it. Like I feel like we typically like let these things go by, but like I just marvel at the fact that a sport has been able to make its schedule release. Because I think the only other thing that is semi comparable is the selection Sundays for the NCAA tournaments. Well, like that is the TV event. That is hype because you want to know, okay, who are the top seeds going into NCAA? Because it's such a unique thing, right? Like it's its own thing. Whereas like that's what I compare it to. Like I think it's one of those unique things where it's like it's just a select. Like you're not going to see any action. You're not going to see anything like outstanding in that show. It's just a regular show, just talking about games being announced. But it's really freaking cool, you know?
Absolutely. Well, you see that now with I think it's got a lot to do with the length of the season, games wise.
Yeah.
Because in the NFL, it's not like baseball where you have 160 games, or the NFL or NBA or NHL where you have 80 or so games. You know, you have 17 games now. That's they changed it to 17 games to make your mark. Every game is so important. I mean, look, we're going to talk about it in a minute, but I've never seen a week one matchup as important as that Jets-Bills game coming up Monday night. I mean, they fall down one in the division and then have a tough stretch before the break. They could be out of it before it starts. So, obviously, I don't necessarily know if they'll be out of it if they lose week one. I mean, if that's the week you're going to lose, if that's the one, you know what I mean? But yeah, every game is so important. So that's why things like March Madness or Selection Sunday are so huge, because it's like, where's my team going? What's my path? There's only so many games we're going to play, so let's find out what's important, what's going on. And it's huge for gambling, which every sport is getting behind now too. So yeah, it's an exciting time, and it's gonna be a slow roll now until training camp starts to ramp up.
Yeah, this is one of the last big things. I mean, we might, if we're lucky, we might get a trade or two in the offseason, or a cut or two signing. We're hopeful for it because
you get a trade this week, so
yeah. So we're hopeful for more news, because NFL, you know, we wouldn't mind it. We wouldn't mind the content, but I mean, we're gonna enjoy this last little bit of content here while we can have it. But yes, Justin, you mentioned it. Let's get straight into things. In the first section, we're going to talk about here when it comes to the 2023 NFL schedule releases is going to be about the week one games. It's all about how you start sometimes. You know, a good first impression can mean a hell of a difference. Now, sometimes, considering it's a 17-game season, you could lose the first game and win the next 16, which, you know, somebody on the show had the Chargers doing last season. I won't say who. But in all actuality, it's ultimately a long season. But week one, it can kind of be an omen, some would say. Some would argue. So to get us started in our week one conversation about how the NFL shaped things up, I think you can all figure out. This man's going to be in the show no matter what.
Happy Mother's Day, by the way, to your mothers and any matriarchs in your family as well. Obviously, you know, we're filming this on the Saturday. I, of course, am not going to be able to make it, so that's why we're recording this right now. And wanted to, at the very beginning, kind of go through the week one of the NFL, if you will, season. Since the schedule was just released on Thursday. Let me tell you something about week one. There are some really good games in this week. I'm very excited for week one. I can't wait. It starts with the Chiefs and the Lions, which, I mean, Kansas City, you know, the defending Super Bowl champion gets the rub every year. The Lions are an interesting choice, and it's one of those things where I think the league is looking at the Lions saying, well, you were a popular team last year. You ended up having a pretty good season, so young, hungry, talented. Let's run it back. Do it again. I think the interesting part, too, about this game is that it's the first time that Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes will be on the same field together since that 54-51 classic that they had back in, what was it, 2018, I think. The game that was supposed to be in Mexico City, they got moved to LA because of bad field conditions. So let's see how the offenses do. It should be a lot of fun. There are some pretty good games in week one, like I mentioned. I think the San Francisco-Pittsburgh game could be really interesting because, depending on how Brock Purdy is, you could have the best rookie quarterback from last year against the first quarterback picked in last year's draft, which could be really interesting. Baltimore-Houston could be fun. C.J. Stroud in his first NFL game against Lamar Jackson and all of his weapons could be a lot of fun. And then the 4 o'clock games could be a lot of fun, too. You have, of course, you have the Rams and Seahawks. Should be a lot of fun with that one. And Jurgens, Geno Smith, love continuing. And your Sunday night game, Cowboys-Giants, always classic rivalry. The Monday night game, too, Jets-Bills, classic rivalry. And you know what? This is Aaron Rodgers getting punched in the mouth by the NFL. Let's see how he responds. First game in New York, and you're taking on Josh Allen and the Bills. I love it. It's going to be a lot of fun there. But, of course, the game we're all looking forward to, Jordan Love goes into Chicago week one against my Bears. Bear down! Cole Kmet's going to have a field day, man. But no, in all seriousness, week one, really, really excited for it. Looks like it's going to be a great slate of games.
I thought the joke he was going to make was that the Washington Commanders were going to go up 1-0 on the season against the Cardinals because a Cardinals team without Kyler Murray is most likely what will be the case there. But let's talk about it, Justin. So Rick kind of mentioned this will eventually be the perfect transition because I think we'll talk about the primetime games next, and he mentioned a couple of them right there. But the first game of the season will be the Detroit Lions against the Kansas City Chiefs. The defending Super Bowl champions will be going up against the Detroit Lions. It's going to be at home. A interesting game to say the very least. We already have lines on these games, by the way, which is amazing. So they're doing early work for us in regards to next season's pick challenge, which we will bring that back, by the way. Spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen. Season 1 of it was so fun, so just wait for the Redux season 2.
The winner.
But let's look at the overall scope of things, Justin. So you got that first game with Lions and Chiefs. What do you think about that first game? Because I was also having the conversation with a couple of friends of mine earlier this week about, obviously they try to go for the biggest game possible to open the season. Like we had a couple of Buccaneers Cowboys games when Brady was in Tampa. Makes sense. It's Tom Brady against the most valuable franchise valued in the NFL dollar wise. In years past, it's been an obvious thing for Super Bowl champions. I believe last season that specifically was the Bills Rams, if I'm not mistaken, was the opening game. So was it? I'm pretty sure it was because we all predicted Rams and they got absolutely throttled. So they're going with the Super Bowl champs, and it's against the Detroit Lions, who I think is going to be a very popular pick to take in NFC North that is wide open, relatively speaking, now with no Aaron Rodgers. So just before we get to the rest of the opening week, what are your thoughts on just that being the first game of the NFL season? More so Detroit being the first opponent for Kansas City to open the season. Like in the context of first game of the season, Detroit Lions are on that stage. Couldn't even tell you the last time the Lions had an opening season game.
I'm shocked. I'm not going to lie. I mean, look, I like the Lions. I think they're going to have a good year. This is the NFL buying into the hype that is surrounding that young team, even after suspending their young receiver. But I got to say I'm shocked. For all the games that the Chiefs are playing and all the opponents they have, for them to be chosen as opening day matchups, I mean, over teams like the Eagles, who they saw in the Super Bowl, the Bengals, who they are constantly at odds with, and first in the last 2 AFC Championship games. Who else? They have the Chargers twice a year that they could have opened up with. They have the Bills. I mean, for the Lions to get picked over all of these teams, it was truly shocking. And I think I know what they're going with, because the last time that Patrick Mahomes played Jared Goff, we saw fireworks, I believe in what was Mexico City, where the Chiefs and the Rams put up like 45 to 50 points each in one of the highest scoring games we've ever seen. I don't know if it's going to be the same kind of thing. I mean, that Lions offense was good last year, but Goff had a habit of not showing up in some of the bigger games, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do. week 1.
Right. I'm with you there, and kind of like Rick mentioned, it is the last time that those two faced off, that high scoring affair. That I want to see. I want to say the Rams ended up winning that game because that was, I believe, that was the same season that they went to the Super Bowl to take on the Patriots, and of course that was basically the final season of Todd Gurley's great years in the NFL. And that was also before Cooper Kupp really ended up taking off because I want to say he got injured that season. May have been just before that game. He didn't play the full season. I know that because he was unavailable in the Super Bowl. But like, yeah, that was a prime Sean McVay offense in regards to the Jared Goff era of things and how it's going. And hey, Patrick, I mean, it makes sense with the Chiefs because Patrick Mahomes, like on opening season games, like he does great. Like he threw 5 or 6 touchdowns against the Cardinals last season in the first game of the season for Kansas City. Like Patrick Mahomes knows when to show up, and Andy Reid and them, they could definitely have a little bit of fun. I'm with you. I definitely understand the hope and idea of things with Detroit being the first opponent. Everyone is banking on the Lions finally taking a massive step this season. In regards to, you mentioned betting before and how popular betting is. Like I'm almost willing to bet every single sports book right now. The popular bet, if people are putting it in, not if people are putting in bets this early, for people putting in bets this early, are people predicting that the Lions are going to be the team that ends up winning the NFC North. And
yeah,
I get it. Like the potential of Jared Goff, like I've been hard on him in the past, but I'm more than willing to concede that like he's a good quarterback. He's a very good quarterback. That's a solid Lions offense. They lost some of the continuity in the running back room. Well, they basically lost all the continuity. They have 2 new running backs there that are going to end up taking the reins with their first round pick from this past draft, and David Montgomery as opposed to Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. So it's new running backs there. Jameson Williams, like you mentioned, is suspended for 6 games because kids, you can bet, but you can't do it on our dang properties, is what the NFL says. But I definitely get it, but I'm kind of with you. Like I just look at the games that Kansas City has on their schedule, even aside from this one, and even if you didn't want to go the whole route of Eagles Chiefs as the first game, because they do face later in the season. And I get that you maybe wanted to save that for a little later in the season when we know a bit more about both sides. I get that, right? You mentioned it, Justin. You're going to take on the Chargers twice. Like if the Jets and Bills are opening against each other, what's the harm in those two? The Chiefs are taking on the Bills this season at home, mind you. So like it doesn't really require too much of a change there. They take on the Raiders twice. They take on Cincinnati in the regular season again. This is going to be the 3rd year in a row they're going to face the Bengals in the regular season. It's going to be in Kansas City. Like there could have been other games. Heck, there's a game we're going to talk about in a later segment that you could have done in Kansas City that would have meant way more, because there's a certain player on a certain team that's looking forward to face the Chiefs, and he's not going to do that in Kansas City. He's going to do that in Deutschland. So
that was also a weird choice, but it's the best game that I've seen them put in an overseas market, so I'm not going to complain about that.
Very true. I mean, and hey, if you had to give that game so that German and American relations stay pretty good, I'll accept that. I understand that. If the NFL needs to play a part in making sure our foreign allies stay foreign allies, I'm good with it. All right, but in all seriousness, let's look at some of the other games. Rick mentioned a couple of them. You have the Baltimore Ravens and the Houston Texans taking on each other in week 1. It will be interesting. CJ Stroud's most likely debut. I'd be shocked if he wouldn't start because I don't foresee Davis Mills beating him out. But it'll be CJ Stroud against a guy in Lamar Jackson who's won an MVP, who's an MVP caliber player, now got his contract, has some new weapons on that team. That should be interesting. An underrated one, I think, Justin, in that 1 o'clock hour, it's totally Vikings Buccaneers. No, it's Bengals Browns, because now that Deshaun Watson is going to have a full offseason where he's actually now played a little bit the previous year, he's working out with the team fully. The Browns are to me the wild card of the AFC. Forget just the division; they're the wild card in the AFC to me, because that team's going to go how Deshaun Watson's level of play goes, and if he can return to even 80% of the form he had in Houston, right? The Browns are going to be competing for a wild card, and so you're going to have back-to-back years now, AFC North champions Cincinnati Bengals, AFC champs from a couple years ago, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and that crew going up against the Deshaun Watson-led Browns that, like, who knows what they could do this season now that Watson is going to actually be back in the fold. So I think that's going to be a pretty underrated game, in my opinion, in terms of games that are in the 1 o'clock hour. You're going to have some games that are games in, like, the Buccaneers-Vikings game and the Saints-Titans game. Panthers-Falcons could be interesting. Bryce Young's likely debut, and Atlanta Falcon, the Desmond Ridder experiment continues there. you got some interesting matchups. I know I'm going down the list here, Justin. So stop me if any of those games really intrigue you. But a decent crew of 1 o'clock games that also sees Jaguars Colts, 49ers Steelers, and as I mentioned, Cardinals Commanders, which Rick's Commanders will go out to a 1-0 season start, we see. But which of those 1 o'clock games like has percolated your interest here, Justin?
You know what? I'm gonna surprise you here a little bit, and I'm gonna go with the Jags Colts game in Indianapolis. I think that's gonna be a very big tone setter for that division. That really seems like a toss up. I know that the Jaguars are the favorite, but it is very hard to repeat. Trevor Lawrence is still a young quarterback. There was an issue with turnovers last year, and they're gonna need to really solidify themselves early week 1, and look for a Colts team that really underperformed last year due to not having a quarterback because Matt Ryan probably looked like he deserved to be in an old age home as opposed to on an NFL field. So that team healthy. Remember, they had a lot of injuries last year, including their big time young running back in Jonathan Taylor and one of their elite linemen in Quentin Nelson. They're going to get back on track. They had a good defense. They're going to have a good running game. They have decent receivers in Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce. They're going to come out swinging for this Jaguars team that won the division last year. Look for that game to be a slugfest.
And also, Justin, revenge game. Gardner Minshew. Imagine he just.
That's true. Well, we'll see who's starting if it's Gardner Minshew. I know that they're saying Gardner Minshew is the starter as of right now. Training camp hasn't opened up yet. I expect Anthony Richardson to come in and also come out slinging in a fight for that starting the job. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins it. So we'll see exactly how far Gardner Minshew goes. But if Anthony Richardson comes out with that big arm and all of a sudden they're throwing the ball over the top to Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce, who both like to stretch the field, secondaries beware. If he can start hitting those balls, this is going to be a really good team. Remember, for a long time, the Colts were a quarterback away. And I know teams change, but they still have the core pieces of that defense, and they still have an excellent line and an excellent running game. If this kid is any good, they're going to be a nasty team for a couple of years.
Yeah. I think they could potentially be the biggest threat to the Jaguars in terms of their hopes of repeating in that division because, I mean, I kind of brushed over the game earlier, but you have probably the most mid-quarterback battle, the mid-off between the Titans and the Saints of Ryan Tannehill versus Derek Carr. So, not exactly a bonanza ratings there, aside from New Orleans.
Again, that's another one. Maybe we see Will Levis win the job week 1. I know they're not thrilled with Ryan Tannehill down there, so it's going to be interesting to see if he's not making the throws they want.
Yeah,
maybe they bring in Levis early.
Yeah, and I think Levis, if someone is going to overtake Tannehill, I think Levis clearly has the edge because I think for all intents and purposes, no one was enamored with Malik Willis's performances last season.
And by the way, for both teams in both divisions in the South, they play each other this year. This is the two divisions in my mind that are just complete toss-up divisions. They're going to play two teams in their own division.
Yep.
And the other South division.
Yep.
That's 10 games of their schedule. One of those teams, and I think in each division, is going to step up, and they're going to win double-digit games this year just by the benefit of an easy schedule.
Yeah.
You're going to be surprised. It really is seeming like a toss-up division. I mean, obviously, if there's one favorite in one of those divisions, it's got to be the Jaguars.
Right.
But I really got news for you. I think that you could see some surprises coming out of the South this year where all of a sudden a team that you haven't thought about is really good and wins double-digit out of the gun, just comes out firing. And yeah, they're going to benefit from the schedules that were made. We'll go through the later weeks in a few minutes, but I was looking through some of these schedules earlier. God, I mean, it wouldn't be unheard of for one of these teams to win like 11 or 12 games.
Right.
It's just like to go from a top 10 pick to maybe they're atop their conference.
Yeah.
It's something.
It's funny you mentioned the potential of sneaking up and winning games in their division because that's what the Jaguars did last season. It took a late season run of form for them
to
end up taking. I know they didn't end up winning 10 games, but it
Oh
was a
no,
late
but they won
season
that
run.
last set. They won their last 7 games, I think,
Yeah.
including a playoff win.
Yeah, and it's
So-
like that's to me that put the Jaguars a year ahead of schedule. We thought that the Jaguars would have that kind of season this year. We thought that would be this year for them. Now that they've already had that, it's interesting. But I'm with you. It wouldn't surprise me if when we do the AFC and the NFC South divisions for the show, it wouldn't surprise me if all three of us each had a different winner for both of these divisions. I think easily both divisions are complete toss-up. You can make an argument for most of these teams, for the most, well, except the Titans. But you can make an argument for all of the teams in theory to win their division. No, in all seriousness, Tennessee could win. But
let me say this about Jacksonville, though. I think that this is the kind of season, if they have a disappointing year this year, just by looking at their schedule, they're going to have a tougher time just because, again, they were first place in their division. They won a lot of games. So they're going to be playing all of the first place teams that aren't in their divisional matchups.
Right.
They need to win the games they're supposed to win. This is going to be a major
prove it.
It's going to be a major statement on who these Jaguars really are. They've proven that they can play games from behind. If not just that playoff series, they're playing from the behind in the Jets game.
Yep.
That in the rain, obviously it wasn't a lot of points, but they've proven that they have stones to come back. Now they have to prove that they can win consistently the games they're supposed to win. If they can do that, this Jaguars team is going to be good for a very long time.
Exactly. And that's ultimately what it is. It's about teams taking that next step. And that next step is to now prove that you are a team that people can rely on to win 10, 11, 12 games now. And it takes a lot to get to that level, and it takes a lot to stay at that level. And now it's all about, does this Jaguars team have that makeup in them, whether it's mentally, whether it's talent-wise. This is where the coach and the GM really earn their cash now, because you had the shock season. You had the year where we're all going to say you were a year ahead of schedule. Because ironically, in the NFC side of things, there's probably a team you could say that about from last season as well, Giants. Like this is a season for some of these teams to prove that, hey, 2023 wasn't a fluke. Like there is something here.
Well, let me say this: I'm going to have the opposite reaction for the Giants just based on their schedule. But we'll go to that when we get.
Trust me, I'm with you. I'm banging the drum on what I think is going to happen to the Giants. You and Rick both know this, but, just comparables. All right, let's go quickly to the rest of the games on tap here. And again, this is going to be a relative transition into what the next set of games we're going to talk about. But let's just finish up week 1 here in the 4 o'clock hour, 4:25 window. You got Broncos Raiders. Division matchup totally makes sense. I think the Raiders started off last season. Their first game was against the Chargers. So the Raiders, again, starting off with the AFC West. First game for the new look Broncos with Russell Wilson, and how things will be not first game with Russell Wilson, but first game with Sean Payton coaching Russell Wilson now. We'll see how that goes. Dolphins Chargers is interesting. Justin Herbert versus Tua to start the season. Those are guys picked back to back. Those are 2 guys that are going to be linked as always. And also 2 quarterbacks that, for all intents and purposes, are due contracts as well. So we'll see what happens there. You have Eagles-Patriots, which is relatively interesting for the most part. See what this Patriots team is going to be like. How good is that defense? Is Mac Jones going to be the starter for long-term, or is Bailey Zappi and Cole Strange going to be the next great duo in New England for quarterback and O-line for the next however many years? Rams-Seahawks, go Geno Smith. But can the Rams bounce back after a season that saw a lot of roster turnover, trading Jalen Ramsey, cutting Bobby Wagner? I believe Leonard Floyd also is not on the team anymore. So that's 3 important pieces from last year's team, which I know they technically weren't good, but that's 3 talented players gone from that squad now. And you also have the idea of who is going to support Cooper Kupp on the offensive side of things, because he can't catch every single pass every single game, even though they try to scheme him to. And is Matt Stafford, like what is he like after the injuries last season, where, remember, it was us specifically talking about it, where we weren't sure how serious the injuries were for a good bit of the offseason in regards to how is this going to affect Stafford long term. So I think this is going to be a decent first benchmark game against the Seahawks team that drafted. You got Woolen and Witherspoon now, 2 W's at corner. Hey, look at that nickname. You got 2 W's at corner that are going to do their thing. Maybe if Jamal Adams is back and he can play well for that Seahawks team, I know it's a big if, but like hypothetically, if that Seahawks team is really improved on the defensive side of things and how good they could be offensively with the draft acquisition, joining DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett of Jackson Smith and Jigba, like there's a lot. That's a game I think that's going to be a big test for the Rams here early in the season against a team that made the playoffs last season. That, talk about shocking everybody. Talk about being years ahead of where they were supposed to be. Pete Carroll and the Seahawks were that last season. as Rick mentioned, Packers Bears open the season for probably like the 75th time in our lifetimes. It feels like they play each other like every other year for the most part. And then those are the 4 o'clock games for that window of time. Anything there stick out to you, or shall we move on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the obvious two of Herbert Bowl is going to be huge. There's a couple of games against for bad teams that I think are very important to see what kind of statement they make. You know, the Bears Packers game is really standing out to me because we're getting our first full taste of Jordan Love, and we're going to see if the Bears could have been successful in their offseason building around their young quarterback who started to light the league on fire towards the end of last year. And did they get him the pieces so that he could start throwing the ball? Because again, the reason they started playing well last year is because he was running all over the place. I need to see him start making good throws consistently throughout the game, and really get that offense going over the air. So that's going to be interesting. And you're right, I'm worried about Stafford. I mean, 2 injuries that are arguably the scariest injuries you can have for a quarterback are the elbow and the neck, and they lag and they take forever, and they could be career ending. I know that they said they expect him to come back healthy, but what version are you getting of a 35-year-old Matt Stafford coming off of major injuries? We'll see. And I'm excited about that Seahawks offense. We'll see if they can build a good season too. I can't believe they ended up drafting Zach Charbonnet, who we had as one of the better running backs, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. It was,
and you add that to Kenneth Walker, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett.
Those skill positions are out of control. And I mean, they had underratedly a very, very good tight end room last year too. They didn't do a ton statistically, but they blocked really well. They spread the field, and they were always open when Geno Smith needed to make a big throw. So that offense could be really good this year. I'm curious to see if Geno Smith ends up being like a top quarterback this year. It's going to be interesting.
Would you say?
Interesting if Geno Smith can be
MVP.
Get carried away with that yet, but listen, his completion percentage was excellent. They focused on high percentage throws. They made him look good. Look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Geno Smith is Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or Aaron Rodgers in his prime or Patrick Mahomes. They have instituted a system where he is playing lights out, and he can do it with his legs, and he can do it with the short mid-range throws, and he's got receivers that are going to go over the top and catch long balls. What more can you ask from your quarterback? Honestly, what more can you ask from your offense? I was surprised that they went all with these offensive pieces and didn't really address their defense, because I thought that's where their issues were last year, especially in the secondary. They had a lot of turnovers, but they gave up a lot of big plays as well. It'll be interesting to see how they look this year, because that offense could be electric.
Yeah, they very much could. And an NFC West that I gotta say, man, right now the NFC West, it's kind of wide open. Like
the NFC West,
I don't want to say wide open. Let me not put it in the same regard as the 2 South divisions.
I was going to say maybe the second place team is wide open.
It's because quarterback matters at the end of the day.
Even still, I don't think it's wide open at all. I think there's a wide divide between the top 2 teams and the bottom 2 teams. I don't expect one from the Rams this year. I don't know when Kyler's coming back.
Right.
The Seahawks and the Niners are going to be the top teams this year.
And let me rephrase it.
Seahawks make enough offensive additions to get through that 49ers defense? That's a question that I don't know, because that defense was stout last year.
Let me rephrase it. Because of the quarterback questions on the Rams and the 49ers, because we don't know, mainly with the Rams, how it's going to affect them. Because if Stafford's done, then their season's cooked. Like that's for sure. But because we don't know who the guy is going to be, and we don't even know whoever ends up being the guy, how is he going to play with San Fran? I don't want to say wide open in terms of any of the 4 can win. Obviously not. I don't think that's the case. But when I say wide open, I mean for Seattle. I think there's an opportunity here for Seattle to make a run at the top seed, low key. Again, let's see what all the reports say. Let's see who ends up becoming the favorite as we get closer to the season in terms of things. I want to say the West was one of the last 2 or 3 divisions we talked about in the previews last season. It's probably going to be a similar case this year. We'll see as we get closer how it's going to shape up, but I think there's a real opportunity here for Seattle to do some damage for sure. I'm also with you in regards to what you talked about with the Bears in terms of how much did they do to help out Justin Fields this season? Because I think if you're a Chicago Bears team with 2 first-round picks in next year's draft, and if Justin Fields is not able to make the strides in terms of passing the football, as young, talented, and dynamic as he is, you got to be able to hit passes in this league. And a team with 2 first-round picks, if they don't perform well, that's ammunition to trade up, to say the very least. And who knows? Maybe they'll hit it on the second time around with a UNC quarterback. Who knows? But there's that. All right, primetime games of Week 1: Cowboys, Giants, and Bills, Jets. We'll talk a little bit in depth on these 2 games more so before going to the overall scope of the primetime slate. But it's those 2 games that are finishing things off. Sunday Night Football on NBC, Cowboys at Giants, and Monday Night Football on ABC, ESPN, Bills at Jets. Justin. First off, of course, they go Cowboys, Giants again, because why wouldn't they? But it'll be those 2 teams there, an NFC East rivalry, which basically is all 4 NFC East teams with each other. And then in the AFC, starting the season, iron sharpens iron. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets got to deal with Josh Allen and the Bills. What were your thoughts on that when you saw it?
I was hurt. That's a hard game to start the year. I appreciate that it's at home. They are expecting a lot, putting them on Monday night to open the season, to open Week 1 against arguably one of the best teams in the NFL, who I think drafts very well. So their defense is going to be fully loaded and fully healthy. The Bills start fast. They got like a lull in the middle, and then they end strong, which is what you want from your football team, obviously, going into the playoffs. When it gets to the playoffs, maybe that's a different story, but regular season-wise, that's the way they are. So the Bills generally like to come out with a win. If you remember, they were blowing teams out in the first few weeks of the season last year. They were far and away the best team in the league early. So I'm concerned. I am. And it's not going to get easier for the Jets. They play the Cowboys the next week. Then they play the Patriots, which is probably their easiest game before the bye, which is, again, not a gimme if you see that defense. I know that offensively they have some struggles, but defensively they had one of the top defenses last year, and Judon gets after the quarterback. So, and then they play the Chiefs. So they need a win. They need to win early. It's not going to be easy to catch the Buffalo Bills from behind. I know they also have a tough schedule this year, but the Jets need to jump out, and they need to get onto this winning bandwagon early. There's no reason they shouldn't be able to win, especially with the way they played in the 2 Buffalo games last year. They were just a quarterback away from sweeping the Bills last year. So it'll be interesting. They're going to have to get after Josh Allen early, force him into making mistakes, have that defense play strong, and Aaron Rodgers is going to need to score. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, for sure. It's certainly baptism by fire is what the NFL said to the Jets.
I've really never seen such a must win on Week 1. Because for real, if you want to be considered one of the best teams in the league, which you just went out and you traded a bunch of assets to get a quarterback because you believed you were a quarterback away last year. You've signed some receivers. You've made your additions through the draft. You believe you should contend for Super Bowl this year. Yet now you have to play a division rival who is arguably one of the best teams in the league, who's also competing for a Super Bowl Week 1, and then go through a gauntlet through 6 weeks before your bye week.
Yep.
Which thankfully they have a good early bye in Week 7. And then you expect to come back if you lose. Like let's say you lose Week 1. Now you still have to play the Cowboys, who are always good. You have to play the Chiefs coming up, who are always good. You still have the rest of that AFC West. And you're also going to play the Broncos, who have an excellent defense, the Eagles, who you've never beaten. What are you expected to do now if you start 3-3 with divisional losses and the Bills jump out to a 2-game lead? Your divisional chances could be over. I mean, sure, you can have the top wildcard spot, but your divisional chances might be over early. Right. So you really need to get ahead of that. And I think it's a must win for the Jets already.
Yeah. And you want to talk about proving yourself. Like maybe this will be a conversation as we get closer to the season. Maybe it might pop up in one of the previews or as the previews go along, but coaches, that is going to be a big year for them in terms of, the roster, the situation, everything. Bob Saleh let's talk about receipts last season. Hey, there's a receipt on that trade for Aaron Rodgers, and you gotta pull through with this one now, to say the very least. So it's going to be a very, very interesting run of things for the Jets. Of course, in terms of strength of schedule, like some teams are going to go through it here. Some teams are going to go through it.
So my question is, does the Aaron Rodgers trade actually give them another year? Because they've given up a lot on Aaron Rodgers. They cannot.
You're saying it makes no sense to have coaching turnover after just 1 year.
They can't give up on the Aaron Rodgers experiment after 1 year.
That's fair.
And Aaron Rodgers is not at the point in his career where he's going to go through a rebuild.
Right.
So does that buy the coach and the GM a little bit extra time?
Probably. I think it does, because you also consider the fact that you're most likely going to lose your first round pick. I don't foresee a world where Aaron Rodgers isn't able to play the 65% of snaps. So it's most likely going to become a first round pick. So you
unless they keep the 1 seed by week 10.
Yeah. I was actually thinking of that joke. It's like, what if the Jets just start like 10-0 and sit Rodgers for the last 7 games? Zach Wilson, your time to shine. But
yeah,
like in all actuality, you're not going to have a first round pick next year. I think the mindset of the Jets is we got to go for it. Like, I do think that's going to be the mindset of the team. I don't think it's anything less. So it kind of is what you've talked about. Like, you're going to have to see some surprising performances here this week, or in this early portion of the season, because you got the Bills to start things off. You got the Cowboys in Dallas. Now, granted, that's been a pretty good situation for Aaron Rodgers in his career, mind you. But, if that'll continue in the Jets green versus the Packers green, it's a wait and see situation. You got the Patriots there. You have the Broncos, who knows what they'll look like, because that's going to be a couple weeks in. And then you got the Eagles. The defending NFC champions are before your bye week. And also, by the way, you also have the defending Super Bowl champions there as well. So it's just, I think you said the perfect word. Gauntlet is what the Jets have. You could not ask for anything more difficult. It's the team that won your division last year. That's going to be a top, at least 3 favorite just in their own conference to win.
Yeah.
The defending Super Bowl champs, the defending NFC champs, a team that maybe they'll be good this season in the Broncos, and another division winner from last year in Dallas.
Even if they're not good, that's a nasty defense.
Yeah.
They hold teams down. They got to get their offense going. That was the issue. Their defense holds teams down.
Yeah. To say the very least. Any thoughts on Cowboys Giants before we move on, or shall we get to the primetime slate?
Yeah, I'd like to see the Giants, make it a little bit more competitive. I think that they struggled a lot against the Cowboys last year. And it was disappointing for a team that had a generally very good season. They struggled within their division against the better teams in their division. So I think if the Giants want to take a step forward, they really need to prove that they can contend with the Cowboys and the Eagles. And they need to at least make these games close. Week 1, you have an entire offseason to prepare. It is at home. It's in your building. Let's be competitive here. Let's show this division we're going to take a step forward, and we're gonna solidify ourselves as a contender against 2 really good football teams by, if not contending, then beating the Dallas Cowboys week 1.
Right. And just to see what else is coming up with the Giants just immediately thereafter that, you get a game against the Cardinals the week after that. So depending on things, maybe like a half bye week there, basically. But then you get you get the 49ers on Thursday Night Football on the 21st. You get the Seahawks the week after them, so that's an NFC West gauntlet there. Those next 3 games being against that division, and then after that is the Dolphins and the Bills in back-to-back games before you get a Commanders game there.
I complained about the Jets schedule. The Giants have a harder schedule in my mind. The Cardinals game will be without Kyler. That's a must-win for them, obviously, because you don't know what's going to happen in the next coming weeks. The Giants can start off very slow, and it's not their fault. They are playing the cream of the crop in the NFL over their first 6 games. Some of the best defenses that you've seen in a long time. And look, they're not even playing the Eagles until their last 3 games of the season.
Basically,
but it's Eagles, someone else, and then Eagles to end their year. So they're going to really need to come out strong. I think Dable will have them in the right mindset, in the right position. I do think they improved in the offseason. Not a ton, just based on a weak free agency and a weak draft class. NFL-wide, like not just for them. They did the best they could with the pieces that were available. And I love Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. I think that was an excellent draft pick for them. They've made moves, they've addressed concerns, and they're a well coached team. But this is gonna be a tough start.
Tough start to say the very least with some primetime in there. And hey, we mentioned Jets primetime games. We mentioned Giants primetime games. Let's keep talking about the important games here, Justin, in terms of the primetime game schedule for things here in the NFL. I have the list in front of me right here in terms of Thursday night football, Monday night football, and Sunday night football. So very quickly, the rundown of things as it do be going. Thursday night football games, you got Detroit Lions, Kansas City Chiefs, Vikings, Eagles, Giants, 49ers, Lions, Packers, Bears, Commanders, Broncos, Chiefs, okay, Jaguars, Saints, Buccaneers, Bills in week 8, Titans, Steelers, Panthers, Bears, Bengals, Ravens, 49ers, Seahawks, Cowboys, Jesus, Patriots, Steelers, Chargers, Raiders, Saints, Rams, and then week 17, Jets, Browns. Those are all the Thursday night football clashes that we'll see. On Sunday night, if it will show me, here's the Sunday night football schedule. That'll be on NBC and also live stream on Peacock, or the Cock, as some people call it. Week 1, Cowboys, Giants. Week 2, Dolphins, Eagles. Steelers, Raiders, week 3. Yes, the traditional Steelers end up going to Las Vegas / Oakland for a game, because it feels like they nearly do that every single year. And sometimes actually tend to lose those games, funny enough. Chiefs, Jets. Week 4, that's one of those. That's part of the gauntlet right there. You got Cowboys 49ers in week 5. That's a rematch there. Unfortunately, no Zeke Elliott to try to be the center again in that one for revenge. Talk about the Giants gauntlet. Week 6, Giants Bills. Week 7, Dolphins Eagles. Could be interesting there. Week 8, Bears Chargers. Week 9, Bills Bengals. A rematch of the playoffs from last season. Week 10, Jets Raiders. Week 11, Vikings Broncos. Week 12, Ravens Chargers. Interesting there. Week 13, Chiefs Packers. Bye week for the Chiefs. Week 14, Eagles, Cowboys. Week 15, Ravens, Jaguars. That could be potential wild card status right there, depending on how divisions end up shaking up. Bengals, Steelers, week 16. And then Packers, Vikings, those frauds in week 17. And then that's the Sunday night schedule. And then the Monday night football schedule. It will be Bills, Jets, of course, as we mentioned. And then you go to Saints, Panthers for week 2. I mean, who knows? Maybe Bryce Young just balls out in week 1. Week 2. Oh, it's the doubleheader, actually. Week 2 is the doubleheader, and week 3. So you got Saints, Panthers, and Browns, Steelers, and you got Rams, Bengals, and Eagles, Buccaneers for those. So, heck of a job. And then week 4, Seahawks, Giants. Week 5, Packers, Raiders. Week 6, Cowboys, Chargers. Herbert and Dak will be interesting, to say the very least. 49ers, Vikings, week 7. So the 49ers get to smack up the frauds that they could have potentially faced in the playoffs last year. Week 8, Raiders, Lions. Week 9, Jets, Chargers. They're not making it easy for you, man. Broncos, Bills in week 10. Eagles, Chiefs, week 11. That's the big one right there. That's the Super Bowl rematch that we've been waiting for. Monday Night Football, week 11. Bears, Vikings, week 12. Bengals, Jaguars, week 13. Clash of the Cats. And week 14, Packers, another doubleheader in week 14, Packers, Giants, and Titans, Dolphins. The Ryan Tannehill revenge game. And then week 15, Chiefs, Patriots. Week 16, Ravens, 49ers. And week 17, Lions, Cowboys. Man, that was a lot of games I know I just listed there. So overall, the idea of the primetime games, Justin, it looks like for the most part that the NFL is delivering when it comes to those primetime schedules. I don't know if you want to take it from games there that stood out to you or just overall scope. How do you think the NFL did in terms of their primetime schedule? Now, I know obviously it'll depend on how teams are going to end up performing by that point. I make a joke about the Titans Dolphins. Who knows? Maybe both teams are above 500 at that point. You know, it could happen. Or like I said, early on, the Carolina Panthers getting a primetime game. Maybe Bryce Young throws for like 350 yards in his first game, and now you're going into week 2. Man, Bryce Young is a house of fire going into that one. You know, like, what do you think overall of the scheduling that the NFL did with their primetime set of games?
Did you notice something that was missing there?
Is this a joke I'm supposed to get? No Geno Smith? Is that where you're trying to get me riled up?
Geno was there. The Seahawks were there. But there were 2 teams missing that I know of. That's the big change this year, is that teams are not guaranteed a primetime game. And if you're not expected to be good and it looks like you're tanking, you're not going to get the benefit of having primetime scheduling.
Which nor should they.
So 2 teams missing. The Cardinals do not have a primetime game as of yet. Obviously, flex scheduling is different. And the Houston Texans are currently scheduled for 15 out of their 16 games to be at 1 o'clock. 1 game at 4 o'clock, and week 17 is not announced yet. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see that there are no there are certain teams that aren't getting a shot now to play. I think the NFL was worried about their product. But it is interesting because there are some games where you're like, why are these primetime games? I mean, you look at like, I don't know, off the top of my head, like Titans Dolphins. I mean, yeah, the Titans could be good, but realistically, do you expect the Titans to be involved week 14?
Probably
I don't
not.
think a lot of people do.
Derrick Henry, though.
Yeah.
If he's still there.
Well, like week 3, Eagles versus the Buccaneers. It's not like Tom Brady is there anymore. You know what I mean? Like there's I'm sure better games week 3. Hold on, let's look at the week 3 schedule. If I can get things to work properly.
I like this. I got it pulled up.
Yeah.
So I mean, so the first of the Monday Night Football games, like you mentioned, Eagles, Buccaneers. Other games that are happening that week: Panthers, Seahawks, Vikings, Chargers. At least that's 2 playoff teams from the year before. Yeah. Bills, Commanders, Patriots, Jets, Dolphins, Broncos, Titans, Browns. Oh God, Colts, Ravens, Giants, 49ers is the Thursday night game. So
yeah. So, I mean, look, I expect the Colts and Ravens to be good. I expect the Jets-Patriots game. If it's not a good game, I mean, it's still like a blistering rivalry. Those teams hate each other. You know what I mean? Look, you can even make the argument that, hey, maybe Broncos-Dolphins might be a better game, or Colts-Ravens. Colts-Ravens is always a good game. I mean, I don't know if you remember that comeback that the Ravens had against the Colts. I think they were down like 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter.
Yeah.
Lamar came storming back.
Yeah.
Look, it's just weird choices to me. But I mean, look, there's also the blockbuster games that we have there that everyone's looking forward to. I mean, most things with the Chiefs or the 49ers are top billing.
Right.
The Jets, my Jets have some excellent matchups. They play the couple AFC West teams. There's a couple divisional games. They're going to play their first ever Black Friday game against the Dolphins. It's going to be a huge game late in the season. So. Yeah, look, I know a lot of it has to do with the markets and what team is going to sell and which time frame and time slot. But yeah, I don't know. There's always like a couple of games you look at and you're like,
I feel you.
In here.
Yeah, part of it, like you mentioned, is just it's when you see a matchup. To me, the more confusing matchups are when there's 2 teams that are in there. Be like, if there's at least one in there that's acceptable, you understand it. Like, yes, while Eagles Buccaneers is, Buccaneers are there, it's the Eagles there. It's the defending NFC champions. Like, you can kind of pacify. And also, us looking through that schedule,
the Eagles are in 6 primetime games this year. I expected them to be, in a bunch of primetime games.
Exactly, but that's what I mean. Where it's like the Eagles being in that game is why the Buccaneers are there. They're only there because of who the.
No, I know, but I thought that there were better choices. I don't know. I mean, maybe they didn't want to overload certain teams. I mean, I don't know how often the Ravens are in there. I think there was 4 teams that had 6 primetime games this year.
I don't know if we could. When you talk about overloading and what they were doing to us with the Broncos early last season, I don't know if we could give the NFL that pass. They made a massive mistake with the Broncos last year. Remember, it was like every single week the first 7 weeks.
They did it to the Jets this year. So if the Jets end up the same way, they're going to have issues.
Sheesh. They really have the potential to give primetime games to teams that might underperform, huh?
Well, look, the Broncos are a major market who just traded for a Hall of Fame quarterback and had a top 5 defense.
Yeah, step back on the Hall of
Fame.
It's got the
making.
I'm with you.
What?
Step back on the Hall of Fame part, but I'm with you. I'm kidding. Calm down.
Look at the stats. We had this argument before, Jerry.
Well, no, I was arguing. I was arguing the first ballot part.
Oh, I don't know if he'll make it the first ballot, but he's a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Good.
But yeah, look, it should have worked out better, and it didn't, and it might have had something to do with their coaching. Mm-hmm. We're going to see this year because they have an offensive genius and what I think is probably a Hall of Fame coach in Sean Payton coming in this year. They still have the weapons. They still have the team. They should be able to take a step forward. I don't imagine they're going to be a bottom 5 offense this year,
right?
Which is wild to me because if they were a bottom 10 offense, the lower third, but scored above the 5th place team, they would have started the season 10-2 last year.
Yeah.
They would have averaged 18 points a game.
And that's not a high bar. 18 is not.
That is one of the lowest scoring teams in the NFL as per last season.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's insane, to say the very least. Real quick, because obviously Monday and Sunday night, there's plenty of bangers happening there, of course. Like that's the expectation, especially with the money NBC and ESPN pay. Well, let's talk about Thursday night, because I think even last year on the pod when we talked about the schedule, we had a similar conversation to where Thursday Night Football for years has been like the redheaded stepchild of the primetime games. It's like we always get excited for Sunday night, we always get excited for Monday night, and Thursday night games is like for the longest time were like freaking Texans Titans when both teams only had like 4 wins, or like Cardinals and Bears when those teams were both bad. Like for a while Thursday night football was not like, it felt like a lot of the bad games were there. And obviously Thursday night football sometimes the players don't care. But it feels like,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I don't think it's the scheduling.
Mm.
I don't like. There's every primetime slot has their share of poor games. Like I mean, I'm sure I could look through it right now and tell you, like, all right, like what are we doing here? Why is this game here? Like,
but what I mean to say about that is I feel like this season they did a pretty good job with the Thursday night games. I think the last 2 years they've done a good job trying to build Thursday night football as it's not just 2 random teams that were just chucking.
Yeah. I agree. I like the scheduling, but it's in my mind, until you prove otherwise, it's going to be a diminished product. I mean, the teams don't want to play. You have a shortened schedule. You have a shortened week to prepare, and you could tell the difference. You know, guys are tired.
Yeah.
They don't get their rest. Guys don't want to play. Guys don't want to play those days. And I mean, especially late in the year, when I think you've noticed like the teams they expect to be in contention late in the year, they kind of fall off towards the end of the year. You don't see a ton of guys. I mean, I guess the Jets, who they think is going to be good, and the Chargers, but it's Patriots, Steelers, week 14, Chargers, Raiders, who I don't expect the Raiders to be involved late, are there week 15. New Orleans Saints, Los Angeles Rams. I don't think either team is going to be involved late. And the Jets, Browns, I mean, in theory, either team.
Revenge game.
Both those teams are a wild card, but yeah, that is a revenge game after their collapse last season. But look, I think they understand that these injuries and tired and like diminished product happen on Thursday night because late in the season, especially late in the season, guys don't want to play.
Exactly.
3-4 days earlier,
which is why they're trying to put at least somewhat meaningful games in that stretch. Because before that end stretch that you're talking about, because the end of the season leaves a lot to be desired, obviously. But if we're talking about a little bit earlier in that week 11 Bengals Ravens, that's going to be an important game for the scope of the NFC North division. Week 12 49ers Seahawks. Who knows what the division is going to look like come week 12 of the season. Week 13 Seahawks and Cowboys. God damn, back-to-back Thursday night football weeks for the Seahawks. Why are you doing Gino like that? He's going to overcome it. But, like, that's 3 pretty good weeks in a row right there if you're talking about teams. And then a little bit earlier in the season, good division, at least historic division matchups where teams, they're maybe not bad blood, but at least competitive. Lions, Packers, maybe it'll be competitive depending on how Jordan Love looks early in the season. Week 6, the Broncos-Chiefs matchup. Russell Wilson played good in the final game of the season against the Chiefs, actually. or one of the last 2 games of the season against the Chiefs. So maybe you have that. Like it could be something. When I mentioned Thursday Night Football, I don't mean to say where it's like, oh, there's not going to be a stinker for Monday Night and Sunday Night Football. Obviously, there will be at least 1 or 2, but it's Thursday Night's reputation. Like it's the memed thing. Rick doesn't watch Thursday Night Football, for God's sakes. Now that's more of an Amazon thing than an NFL Thursday Night playing thing, but irregardless, like it is the one that gets memed on. And I think for the most part, I think the NFL has understood that. I think they've made a concentrated effort, at least last year and this year. I say that because I don't remember 2021 for the life of me. I think they've made a concentrated effort each of the last 2 seasons to try to put the best possible games for the most part. There's one on paper here and there that's kind of like, which is going to happen. But I think they tried for the most part to get good games there. I mean, week 2, Vikings, Eagles, maybe could be good. Week 3, Giants, 49ers. Those were 2 playoff teams from last year. Like it's a pretty good effort, I try not to be the Russian judge here. Trying to give effort and credit where effort and credit are due. So I want to do that. But I think overall, for the most part, we both agree. Pretty good primetime games for the most part overall. And yeah, no Cardinals and Texans as they shouldn't be there because I'm not trying to watch. I still can't even name you. Rick has told us this in the chat like 5 times. I still cannot tell you who the backup Cardinals quarterback is. Is this David Blau?
Yeah.
Colt McCoy?
Colt McCoy and David Blau.
Jesus Christ. That is a quarterback battle. You know how people are always like, I want to be a fly on the wall to see when such and such is happening? I don't want to be a fly on the wall in the Cardinals locker, in the Cardinals
quarterback room, I tell you.
Yeah. I mean, then again, there's going to be flies on the wall anyway because the Cardinals stadium amenities were not highly ranked earlier on. Anyways, let's move on from the primetime. Well, actually, we're not fully moving on from the primetime games because there are a couple games here that are going to be mentioned that I probably briefly spoke about here. But Justin, when you think primetime, when you think important games, what do important games sometimes coincide with? Important dates. Thanksgiving and Christmas, ladies and gentlemen. The holiday time will eventually approach us. I'm sure there's going to be Halloween decorations come July and August, knowing where we live, Justin. But with that comes football. And we have some good Thanksgiving and Christmas Day games here, potentially, to say the very least. So, Podfather, come on back down and get us started. We're talking about the holiday games.
Holiday football here, boys. The Thanksgiving triple header is always a classic, no matter what teams are playing in it. The NFL this year decided once again to go for a little more of a divisional flavor with some of their games. Actually, all of their games on Thanksgiving Day and Black Friday, and 2 of the 3 on Christmas Day are interdivisional games. You have Green Bay going to Detroit, which, always a classic having the Lions play on Thanksgiving, and that could be a fun one. We'll see who Green Bay's quarterback is, if it's still Jordan Love. In the middle game, you have Washington going to Dallas. That could be a sneaky good one. Again, Ron Rivera is coaching for his job this year. And we'll see if Eric Bieniemy's offense can translate to a Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett quarterback room versus a Patrick Mahomes room. And the Dallas Cowboys always want to defend the home turf on Thanksgiving night, so that's a lot of fun for them too. And then the night game is San Francisco against Seattle in Seattle, which I think is really, really excellent. I really think that's a good one. Nice divisional game, a lot of revenge on the line, and who doesn't love seeing Geno Smith play in primetime, right, Jerk? What's interesting, though, is that they have a Black Friday game now, too, and it's Miami against the Jets. I think that's phenomenal. Look, it's on Amazon Prime. A lot of us are going to be shopping on Amazon over that Black Friday. Not me, of course, because I hate Jeff Bezos, but regardless. The rest of the normal people will be doing that. I think it's a good way to kind of tie in everything, watch the game and go on Amazon and buy your Black Friday Christmas presents. Why not? And that's a nice divisional game. That could be a lot of fun, too, seeing Tyreek Hill against Sauce Gardner again, Aaron Rodgers against the Miami defense. We'll see. The Jets might be in real contention for that one. Christmas Day, you've got another triple header with Vegas and the Chiefs. Could be a nice high-scoring game there. And then you also have the Giants and the Eagles. Now, this is the one game that I think I have a little bit of an issue with, only because the 3 games during the season last year were not close at all. So this might be the stinker of the 3. But listen, if the Giants got better, it could be a fun one. But having it in a Christmas Day game is a lot of fun too. And the last one is so intriguing because it's San Francisco and Baltimore. It's the Beyonce Bowl Redux. It's Harbaugh Bowl 2 Electric Boogaloo, but without Jim Harbaugh there, basically. Again, could be a fun one, too, because you've got the Ravens, you've got Lamar Jackson against that defense, and then on the other side, George Kittle, Debo, Brandon Ayuk going up against that Baltimore defense. And we'll see if by that time Baltimore is still healthy or not, because if they are still healthy, that could be a lot of fun. That could be a really tight game. So, again, so far, I think the schedule makers did a really nice job, and I think this is a really excellent way to tie in all the holidays with all the games they have going on.
Can it be the Harbaugh Bowl too when there's no Harbaugh on one of the teams? But as Rick mentions there, 7 games, because I kind of slipped my mind. There is a Black Friday game, so feed on the capitalism, boys. But on Thanksgiving Day, we got Packers, Lions. Of course, Lions and Cowboys are always going to play Thanksgiving, no matter what you want, ladies and gentlemen. You got Packers, Lions as one of as the first of the 3 games. Commanders, Cowboys is the second of the 3 Thanksgiving games. 49ers, Seahawks, as we briefly mentioned in the primetime list of stuff, as the 8 o'clock game there. And then the Black Friday game being the Dolphins and Jets. 4 entertaining games, to say the very least, tied around holidays there, Justin. I'm kind of with Rick. I think they've relatively done good for the most part. I would have maybe liked to see a little better competition for the Lions on Thanksgiving Day, but I feel like 9 times out of 10, they just default to one of the division opponents taking on Detroit when it comes to it. Like, I feel like Packers, Lions, or Bears, Lions has been a pretty constant on Thanksgiving Day. So what do you think of the Thanksgiving Day and Black Friday games?
Well, you're right about that, actually. Of their last 6 opponents, 5 of them have been divisional for Detroit on Thanksgiving Day. Question: do you know the last time Detroit won a Thanksgiving Day game?
Is it when David Blau started?
Yeah.
Is it when he played?
I don't know. I don't know who the starting player was. Actually, I don't even have last year's. Did they win last year? It's weird that I have it. Have my record up to 2021, not 2022.
Ah, perfect. What site are we using there, Justin? Call them out.
Yeah, I'm gonna show them up.
Did they win last year?
No, they didn't.
No? Okay, fair enough. I would guess like 2018 or 2019 would have been my guess.
No, you have to go all the way back to 2016, where they beat the Minnesota Vikings 16-13.
Jesus.
Yeah, they have not won.
Do you have the box score?
What?
Do you have the box score?
No, I don't have. I can get it if you'd like, but yeah,
I'm tempted.
It's been that long.
let me BS for you real quick. All right, so like I said, aside, as Justin agrees, aside from again, would have liked a little bit of a better opponent there for the Lions, but could be interesting. And who knows? Maybe it's just the hype of, oh, this is a Green Bay Thanksgiving Day game without Aaron Rodgers, and who knows what Jordan Love will be like. We're going to be a good chunk of the season at that point, so we'll have a pretty good idea of what Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers season outlook will be, and if the Lions are facing a 2-win team at that point, they're facing a 2-win team, right? Commanders Cowboys could be interesting. Like Rick has kind of made the joke of it's either going to be a Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett team. Now Sam Howell did beat the Cowboys late last season. In an interesting game. You could say that the Cowboys were checked out of that game. I would still argue the fact that they still lost to Sam Howell as well. So there's that. But it's either going to be Howell or Brissett. What the future, again, it's a similar situation where maybe you could have argued the idea of a tougher team, but I think if you're going to ask me who's going to give the more competitive game potentially, I would hope it's Washington, because I think the Commanders, like Rick mentioned, Ron Rivera is going to be coaching for his job. It's going to be new ownership there. Who knows? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we just get complete turnover of the apparatus after this season for them. So maybe guys are playing for positions there, playing for security. You might see some desperation there from a Commanders team that, for all intents and purposes, they were fourth place in the division last year, but they weren't a bad fourth place compared to a lot of other fourth place teams. Obviously, see Rams and Cardinals last season. And then ultimately the last game there, 49ers Seahawks. Again, I kind of mentioned earlier, what is the 49ers quarterback situation going to look like at that point? Is Trey Lance going to be balling out? Is Sam Darnold going to have a career revitalized by Kyle Shanahan? Because if there is anyone that could do it, probably that guy. And will Geno Smith and the Seahawks team look as great as we expect them to? Of course they will, but let's just put the hypothetical out there of what it could be. That could be very interesting. And then, Justin, Black Friday, I think, is going to be a big one for you, obviously, because it's another important game for the Jets there. It's Jets-Dolphins. But real quick, do you have the box score for that Vikings-Lions game in 2016?
I do.
All right. What do we got? Give me the names.
All right. Do you remember who the quarterback was?
For the Lions, it had to be Stafford, no?
It was Stafford for the Lions.
Okay. And the Vikings quarterback. No, see, Christian Ponder, I think, was off the team at that point. Was it Sam Bradford?
It was one Sam Bradford.
Let's go.
Who went 31 for 37 with 224 yards, 0 touchdowns, and an interception.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
They were tied with the Vikings driving the ball down the field before he threw an interception. With 1 minute and 15 seconds left, the Lions ran 2 plays for -2 yards to run off 45 seconds and kick the game-winning field goal with 30 seconds left.
Nice. Who got the interception for Detroit there?
Detroit's interception was... Oh, I'm on the Vikings. That's why I can't find it. The interception was made by one Darius Slay.
Of course. Big play Slay, baby.
Big play Slay.
Getting interceptions on the Vikings since 2016.
Absolutely. That was the last time that the Detroit Lions played on Thanksgiving. And the only 2 non-divisional matchups, by the way, were the Houston Texans in 2020 and the Buffalo Bills last year played on Thanksgiving against the Lions. All the way back till their last win was divisional matchups besides those 2 teams. Mostly the Chicago Bears, believe it or not.
Yeah, not shocked.
three Bears games.
Yeah, but I just went through the Thanksgiving Day slate right there, Justin, so you can make any comments there. But again, like I said, Black Friday, Jets, Dolphins. Are your hopes going to be sky high, or are they going to crash and you're going to want to sell those hopes by that time?
I am optimistic for a Jets season for the first time in a long time. I think that defense can be even better than they were last year, which is something that is hard to do considering the way that defense played throughout the season. I'd expect more turnovers because at some point midway through the season, NFL teams realized, hey, if we don't turn the ball over and we just play solid, basic football, the Jets can't score. So that's what they did. And they stopped turning the ball over. The turnovers dried up. And the Jets started losing games. They lost their last 7, I think, games. They lose 6 of the last 7 games
Something
to
like
miss the playoffs. They struggled because they couldn't score, and then and offenses knew what they had to do. So I mean, they didn't give up a ton of points, but I expect them to be much more well rested, and I think they're going to be in better position going forward just by having the benefit of having Aaron Rodgers on the team. So at that point, hopefully, I'm buying stock. But
Hopefully.
let's see, it's hard to say. The Jets are in a tough division. They got a tough
Right.
schedule. The back half of their schedule is a lot easier than the front half, but we'll see. I'm rooting for the Jets. I'll tell you that.
Right. I am too, because I do podcasts with 3 Jets fans and now Bears fan. I used to be able to say 4 Jets fans, but someone had to complicate things. And I hope
back. Stay in Chicago.
but I definitively hope that it is a good Jets season, because I think it would be very entertaining for the Jets to be a player in the AFC, as obviously you guys are hoping for. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit hopeful for it as well. Like I like it when the New York teams are good to a point where it makes dialogue interesting again. Like when New York sports teams are good, I think that's just good for everyone. Until then, the fans eventually take it the next step where they're going to win the championship, despite the fact that you beat a bad team in the first round and then lost rightfully so in the second round. But obviously, irrelevant. Anyways,
a fight right now.
Christmas.
Oh my gosh!
How are you? You can't start a fight.
Just happened. You're gonna make me relive this.
Yes. No.
Already.
Christmas Day, Justin. You can't get mad about Christmas.
Oh my god! I'm Jewish.
I mean, you can't. You still can't get mad at that. You may not. It may not be the biggest thing, but at least you could be like, "Oh, look at the people celebrating." Okay, so Justin hates
me about the Knicks already.
Justin hates Christmas, confirmed. All right,
hasn't even been 24 hours.
Three Christmas Day games here. You got the Raiders and Chiefs on 1:00. Not only will the game be on CBS, Justin, it's also one of the Nickelodeon games this season. So I hope the Chiefs bring the ring around.
Nickelodeon gets a better game than it did last year.
Hopefully, and hopefully Patrick Starr is not just throwing barbs at Jimmy G like Russell Wilson. And then the second game is the Giants and Eagles game, and the third game is the Ravens 49ers game. I gotta say, I think the NFL went 3 for 3 on this.
Yeah, I think this is great. A lot of people are going to point out that Raiders Chiefs game. Last year, the Raiders and the Chiefs played 2 very close games. There was definitely one where it came down to the stretch. If you remember the Frank Clark fumble at recovery that ended up being roughing the passer, which the whole NFL freaked out about, was an excellent game last year. Giants Eagles is always fun, even though I think that the Eagles probably have their number at this point, being one of the better teams in the NFL. And I mean, you got to hope Lamar's healthy at that point in the season, because he hasn't been the last 2 years. So we got our fingers crossed that we're going to get a good game there too.
Yeah, but I think right now it's looking pretty good. To your point, if one of them had to potentially be a dud, it might be the Giants-Eagles ones, just because Def Texas and the Eagles just destroy the Giants by 2+ scores every
any
single
of those teams can end up, any of those games could end up being a dud. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but if I had to put my money down, it might just be that second one, just because the Eagles have a recent history of making the Giants their whipping boy, to say the very least. So it's brutal. But I mean, obviously, we hope that everything is good, because at the end of the day, Christmas, and also like NFL is king sport, but the NBA has kind of owned Christmas Day for God knows how long. The NFL is starting to go in their territory. This is just highly entertaining, to say the very least. So it'll be interesting once next NBA season rolls around to see what the Christmas Day games are for certain. I cannot wait for that. So those are the holiday games. There are no New Year's Day games, I believe, and obviously the day before New Year's, like everyone's playing on New Year's Eve, so I don't really think it's anything to worth bringing up. I mean, if we want to, we can very quickly look at things for that week of the season, week 17. The New Year's Eve stuff, again, it's nothing extremely special because everyone is playing that day except for the Saturday game and the Thursday game. I mean, maybe the Saturday game. Let's briefly mention that. Saturday, December 30th, Detroit Lions versus Dallas Cowboys are playing. And then you got some of the New Year's Eve games include Dolphins-Ravens. Rematch right there from what was a barn burner of a game last season, which included a fourth quarter comeback. You have a Raiders-Colts game, which who knows if he didn't start the season, maybe Anthony Richardson will probably be in play at that point, and we'll see how AR performs late in the year. You got Panthers-Jaguars. Who knows what Bryce Young versus Trevor Lawrence could be like. You have Rams-Giants. Again, who knows with those two teams. 49ers-Commanders, Steelers-Seahawks. Bengals-Chiefs is the big one there, obviously. And then Chargers-Broncos, along with Sunday Night Football. There's one of the ones that is interesting, to say the very least. Vikings, Packers. Oh dear God in heaven. But maybe decent lineup there. A couple of solid games there for New Year's Eve. So that's good. And that week, Thursday Night Football, Jets Browns. We just keep. I'm not even trying this. We just keep finding these Jets games.
They're gonna be prevalent this year, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully we don't go the way of the Broncos. We go the way of
right.
I guess maybe the Broncos earlier.
Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs are good in primetime.
No. But I meant like they're a good defense with some decent skill players that got a older quarterback,
right?
Who is arguably a Hall of Famer. Well, not arguably a Hall of Famer. They got a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah.
And we're going to see what they are, because there's 3 examples of it working out, and there's 3 examples of it crashing and burning, and 2 of them are the Broncos on opposite sides. So we'll see. I mean, there's the Bucks, the Broncos, and the Rams all did it and won a Super Bowl.
Right.
The Colts did it twice, and the Broncos crashed and burned.
Yeah.
So
major catastrophes.
Yeah. So we'll see how it works out, because right now the odds are about 50-50 in today's NFL.
Very true. Very true. Speaking of which, well, it's always 50-50. International games. Will they be good? Will they be bad? Who knows? But all that matters is that we still have good relations with England and Germany at the end of the day. So, to start us off, Podfather Rick, will we avoid souring relations with our European compadres? Let us know your thoughts on the international set of games.
About the international series of games, I'm sure you guys are chomping at the bit to discuss these 5 games that are going on. I gotta say, I think last year was the most successful international series we've seen in a very long time. The Giants picked up that win at the tail end against the Packers, which was a lot of fun. The Saints game with the Will Lutz, the double doink and the 60-yarder to win the game, and he missed it. That was a lot of fun. And even the game in Germany, even though I picked the Seahawks to win that game and they lost, they won like 10 others that I didn't pick them to win, so go figure, right? But that was a lot of fun too. Tom Brady, and Frankfurt, it was a lot of fun there. So looking at this international schedule, I want to focus on 3 games in particular. The 2 Jaguars games back-to-back are intriguing to me for the simple reason that if you want to talk about possibly the future here, I think that having a team back-to-back in London is the NFL's way of saying, let's try this and see if we can cultivate a following to possibly expand to London in the coming years. And I think the Jaguars are the right team to deal with because they're always in London. But I think, too, I saw a report come out that Jacksonville's home field, TIAA Bank Field, is going to be under construction for the next 2 years after maybe next year, I think. And they're going to need to find a home. Well, Shad Khan, who's their owner, also owns Fulham FC in the English Premier League. Now, Wembley Stadium and Tottenham Hotspur Stadium are not Fulham stadiums, but Craven Cottage, which is the home ground of Fulham, only seats about 22,000. Honestly, I think that might be a better spot to seat the London Jaguars for a couple of years, because if Shad Khan's team is playing there in home games for 2 years, which is a pipe dream, you put them in Fulham in that 22,000 seat stadium, it gets a really intimate feeling. I think that could be a win for the NFL and for Shad Khan. The Jaguars, too, they can cultivate a following as well. It could be really cool. And the other game I want to focus on is the first game in Germany, which is the Tyreek Hill revenge game, Dolphins-Chiefs. Now, would this game have been a lot better happening in Kansas City? Absolutely. The fact that it's happening in Germany, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. But you know what it does? It puts Pat Mahomes over in Germany, which I think, you have your best ambassador for the game. And if he's healthy, put Tua over in Germany, because Tua's a very good player. And I think Tua's style can translate really well to how the Germans see the game of football. So I think those could be some really interesting games there. And I think this is going to be a fun international series.
Yeah, when the international games were announced, when we saw that the Jags had back-to-back games, I'm like, oh, they're really pushing the whole they want Jacksonville to move to London thing now, aren't they? Like, that to me is what they meant when I had conversations with some friends earlier in the week. We were talking about testing the waters, and one of them was talking about, hey, testing the waters to maybe get some more primetime games. I'm like, boys, testing the waters to see if a franchise is going to survive in England and if it can be a sustainable thing. And now you're going to have back-to-back weeks here. It's going to be week 4 of Falcons-Jaguars and then week 5 of Jaguars-Bills. So it's an interesting thing to say the very least. Then week 6, you have Baltimore Ravens and Tennessee Titans. How dare we make our British comrades go through a Titans game, but irregardless. And then you will have weeks later on in week 9 and in week 10 of Germany. Dolphins Chiefs is, as we were referring to earlier, Tyreek Hill will get his revenge, not in Kansas City, which I know he's said that he looks forward to playing in Kansas City, but in front of the Germans there in week 9. And then week 10, Colts Patriots. Again, who knows? Maybe Anthony Richardson is taken control by that point. Maybe he'll get to start the back half of the season, and we'll see what he's about. And if he's young, exciting, it could perform very well. And we know that's a big Bailey Zappi thing. Imagine Bailey Zappi versus Anthony Richardson. That Rick might honestly, Justin, Rick might buy a ticket to Germany to be our live correspondents for that game. Who knows if Bailey Zappi's starting at that point? You never know. But let me get your thoughts. Those 5 games internationally. What are your thoughts on them?
Well, I just can't believe that they put such an important matchup that late into the season overseas. It's something that I think the NFL has avoided for a long time. But the Miami Dolphins versus the Kansas City Chiefs in Germany could have major repercussions going forward in the season. I mean, it's both teams that could be competing for their division, should be competing for their division, and could be competing for that number 1 seed if they win their division, because for Kansas City is always going to be one of those teams that competes. But for a team like Miami, who competed last year but wasn't healthy enough to continue, and Tua wasn't healthy enough to really step up, coming in with a full off season of rest and hopefully a better offensive line to protect him and keep him off the turf, they could be competing. And if they beat Buffalo, they're going to have double-digit wins. So they should also be competing for the division, and if not the conference. So it's going to be interesting to have a week. What's it? Week 9, week 10. It's week 9. To have a week 9 matchup overseas between 2 major teams is kind of unheard of for this kind of scheduling.
Yeah. Well, also, what's interesting is that when it was released, it immediately the reports and rumors started flying out, because apparently, for all intents and purposes, it was actually supposed to be a Bears-Chiefs game that was going to be the game in Germany at that point. But apparently, according to what some people have said, and again, it's been contested, but apparently there are rumors that the Kansas City Chiefs apparently requested that it not be the Bears that they face in Germany, but it would be another team, not necessarily the Dolphins, but that was something that I saw.
Why would they request that?
Hell if I know. I saw that rumor and I was like, I don't know if that's necessarily the case here. Like,
if I had a home team outside my stadium, I'd rather versus a team like the Bears than a team like the Dolphins.
Yeah.
I mean, giving up my home field advantage, I'd at least rather have a matchup in my favor.
Yeah. It's okay. It's not necessarily something that's like supremely confirmed, but it is apparently allegedly a thing. So this is what NBC's Sports Peter King had this to say about that. When a team gives up one of its home games to play overseas, it has the option of requesting to the league one home game on its schedule the team does not want moved. I'm told Kansas City requested that the Chicago game not be played overseas. So apparently not necessarily the fact that they didn't want to play the Bears in Germany. They just didn't. Well, actually, no, it kind of means that they didn't want to play the Bears in Germany, that they wanted to play somebody else. So who knows? Weird.
That's a weird one for me.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily get it either. But looking past that, I think a relatively good slate of games there. I think the Jaguars back-to-back weeks obviously makes sense. The Jaguars are basically London's team. And if they are going to make something happen in London, like, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if Jaguars are eventually the team. Like the Khan family has, like Rick mentioned, football ownership already over there. Like, it sucks because I feel like Jacksonville is a solid fan base. Like, they care about their football team. And I would hate for their football team to be ripped away and go to London, because it feels like that Britain will finally get revenge for the Revolutionary War there if they get one up on us like that. But, at the same time, it's the NFL, and, the almighty dollar knows no bounds. So we'll see there. But back-to-back games for the Jags. And it could be interesting. I mean, you never know. The Falcons, Justin, we were talking about the NFC South teams before. The Falcons are, I think, the definition of a team where it's like, I think there's only one of two ways they go. They're ever going to be like that shock 10-win team you were talking about, and the offense is great. Bijan Robinson's running over everyone. Kyle Pitts and Drake London are phenomenal, and Desmond Ridder is the quarterback of the future there. Or they're going to be a 3-win team, and Caleb Williams, welcome to Atlanta next season, my boy. Like, I feel like there's no in-between for the Falcons season next season. In theory, per my standard of jokes that I like to make, it feels like it's one of two ways. It's going to be Caleb Williams is the quarterback in 2024, or it's going to be Desmond Ridder is going to be the quarterback there in the future. So
It's going to be
That's
more than that because I think if they end up with the number 1 pick next year, I think they go with a whole new regime. I would assume that the GM is going to be out. Arthur Smith would be in his 3rd year this year, so if it's not working out, he'll probably be gone as well. And you'll have a regime now that's going to go heavy on offensive line and defense because they've drafted offense for the past few years now. They have, Bijan Robinson, they have Drake London, they have Kyle Pitts, they have Cordell Patterson still there.
Algier
That's
as
what I was
well.
going to say. Yeah. So they have a lot of good young pieces there. It's going to be interesting to see if they can take advantage of what should be an easy schedule. I mean, the first 5 games, they have Carolina, Green Bay, Detroit, Jacksonville, Houston, Washington, Tampa. That's their first 7 games. Is it possible for them to go 7-0? I mean, it's unlikely, but I mean, short of Detroit and Jacksonville, most of those teams were not projected to be very good this year. I mean, like I said, we'll see when we actually go through over their actual schedules one by one, but there's a chance that Atlanta wins this division this year. So we'll see how they're doing, and it'll be interesting to see what they do in London against Jacksonville.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have the 2 Jacksonville games, the Falcons being the first, the Bills. Like I said, you got to get one of your premier teams there. So it makes sense that it's a Bills Jaguars game there. Hopefully we get another Josh Allen scenario there. I would very much like that.
It's also a pretty good game to have over there.
Yeah. In all seriousness, Trevor Lawrence, Josh Allen would be the matchup, but Josh Allen sacking Josh Allen is the commentary call that we need, damn it. And then the 3rd London game, Titans Ravens. Again, I don't feel great about us, giving that kind of game to our compatriots overseas. But at the same time, if the Titans are at least halfway decent, there is some animosity there in the past between those 2 teams. The Titans knocked out the Ravens in the playoffs before. The Ravens then knocked out the Titans in the playoffs more recently. So either way, it could be interesting to say the very least. And again, since there are star players, at least in that game, you got Lamar Jackson on the Ravens side, and you have King Henry going to London, the whole King thing, new King. God, actually, no, maybe it makes more sense than I'm giving the NFL credit for the whole Titans going to London thing. I think I shortchanged the NFL on that one. I think it makes more sense now that I actually talked it out. And then Germany, obviously, Dolphins, Chiefs, there's that. And the last of the games, Colts, Patriots, could be interesting. Maybe Anthony Richardson plays at that point. Maybe it's Bailey Zappi. Maybe Rick gets a ticket to that game if Bailey Zappi plays Anthony Richardson. Who knows? But I think for the most part, again, I think the NFL is doing a pretty good job here with the scheduling. Like they got good international games. What I'm more interested to see, Justin, and this is not a unique question. I heard this question on a podcast previously, so this is why I'm asking you this question right now. When do you think will be the possibility of the NFL having an international game eventually in Africa or even in potentially China or something like that? Because we've seen them go to Canada. We've seen them go to Mexico. What's the possibility that they could open up to other markets now? Like if the game is growing, in theory, that would be the next step. Again, this is not a unique question. Like I didn't just think of this. I heard this on another podcast. I want to give credit to the Clickbait Sports podcast that I like listening to on a weekly basis, and the absolute YouTube goats that do that podcast. And I heard them discuss it. And I actually want to get your take on that. What do you think could be the potential a couple years down the line of a game happening? I mean, somewhere in Asia, China or Japan, or even in Africa.
I have no idea. I don't know the level of
fair enough
clarity in either of those continents or countries. I don't know. It's possible. I'm not saying not. I mean, I would assume that there are places there that have the correct infrastructure to have this sort of game. I mean, they have soccer stadiums there that in theory they could play on. But it would depend on the level of popularity, the relationships with the dignitaries there. And like you said, Shad Khan is very popular. He owns which team does he own?
I think Rick said Fulham.
Okay. I know Woody Johnson loves going there. He was the U.S. ambassador to England during President Trump.
What a time.
Yeah.
Woody Johnson.
There's a lot of possibility. I just don't know the magnitude of the relationships and the popularity and whether or not it'd be financially worth it to take a team to another continent.
That's fair. Well, I didn't mean move there. I meant more just so a game.
No, just for a game. Yeah. Even still.
I think it could be a possibility because the NFL, if there's one thing they like to do, if it can make them money, they're going to look into it. So they're going to do their due diligence. But I will say this: if we do end up having games like that, I'm saying this right now, you better send good games over there because they are not going to play. You cannot send them Cardinals Texans for a overseas game. They will not be happy about that. Or maybe they will. I don't know. Maybe you could trick them. But yeah, that completes the route of the international games. So Justin, we've gone through a bunch of games here already. Probably people's heads are spinning. So let's take a little bit of a step back. We're not going to go too intense with this. That's the last section of the schedule we're going to go here. Just some fun games to watch out for, right? Like we talked so much prime time. We talked a little bit Jets and Giants. We mentioned other games here and there with these teams, the international games just now. Let's have a little bit of fun in just other games that could be fun to end up watching this season. So, per usual, Podfather, you're going to get us started here. What are other games that the good people could watch out for this upcoming season? There's going to be at least one Bears game in this, I feel.
My other interesting games, I have 2 Jets and I have 1 interconference but same division matchup here. I don't want to involve the Jets too much because, obviously there are other teams that are going to be more interesting, in other weeks. But these 2 games for the Jets, I think, are tipping points if you really believe that this Jets team is going to be worth it this year. Week 2, the Jets take on the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas, which is a tasty matchup of Aaron Rodgers against Mike McCarthy, the man who brought him into the league and the man who guided him to that Super Bowl win. I think, that's a really fun matchup, but that's also a CeeDee Lamb versus Sauce Gardner. I'll sign up for that matchup any day of the week. That's going to be a really fun match there. The Jets also highlight on October 1st, the Sunday night game, they play Kansas City. And again, if you're a Jets fan and this is the year that you think you're a Super Bowl or bust, you got to go through the defending champions and you got to take down Patrick Mahomes. So we'll see. That could be a high-scoring game if both offenses really have a good feeling about everything. And the last game I want to highlight, Dolphins-Eagles. It's another Sunday night game on October 22nd because, again, the Eagles were phenomenal last year, and the Dolphins we thought were going to be phenomenal. And they had a lot of injuries. They had a lot of problems that curtailed them. They still got into the playoffs, but with Skylar Thompson there. So if Tua's fully healthy, Tua versus Jalen Hurts, a battle of the guys from the Alabama quarterback system, I'm going to sign up for that in a heartbeat. But it's going to be a lot of fun, and please avoid any games that are on Thursday nights because Al Michaels is still terrible and Amazon is awful as well.
Lord above. I give him credit. There wasn't a Bears game in there. I was kind of surprised about that. So
Yeah, me too.
So there's that. All right. Games, again, just a quick run through the schedule. NFL, I'm not going to lie. I didn't notice it at first. You got away for a moment, but I realized it now. Browns-Texans in Week 16 on Christmas Eve. Listen here, you little guy. Listen here, you little you-know-whats. You're really pushing this old Deshaun Watson playing in Houston again thing for a second straight season. You were able to get away with it last year because we're going to suspend him just enough games for him to return against Houston, and obviously he didn't end up playing well, because he didn't play football for nearly 2 years, and now it's like, hey, Deshaun Watson's going to have a full season back. Let's put him back in Houston yet again. So there's Browns Texans in Houston one more time, the redux of that to say the very least. On continuing with that week in Week 16, Bills Chargers I think could be a very entertaining game potentially. Because you have, by that point, again, Week 16, I don't know about most likely, but there's a chance that a division or two will already be clinched at that point of the season. And then you talk about wild card. Justin, I think wild card-wise in the AFC, this is just the idea of, and I'm basing this off of last season. Let's say, hypothetically, the 4 division winners from last year are the same as this year, right? Just hypothetically speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's knock out the Bills, the Bengals, the Jaguars, and the Chiefs. So let's say those 4 are already locked in. 3 wild card spots in the AFC. These are the teams competing for the wild card spot. You have the Miami Dolphins. You have the New York Jets. You have the Baltimore Ravens. You have maybe potentially the Steelers/Browns. I'll put them together in 1. So 4, because one of them is probably going to be slightly better than the other. Maybe the Indianapolis Colts or Tennessee Titans if they're good enough. So again, a 5th one, I would probably knock those down more so. But let's say 5 in theory with me keeping teams there. The Chargers at 6, and then maybe the Broncos have a good season this year. So you're talking about for 3 remaining wild card spots. And I know we talked about this last season with the hyper competitiveness, especially with the AFC West and this time the third. But even not keeping it to one division, there's going to be 1 or 2 good teams that miss the playoffs in the AFC this season because of the format structure. And that's why we're talking about, when we talk about the schedule, and we're going to, again, come to division previews, we're going to go in advance. This is a really critical juncture of the season for these teams where it's like, I think every single game, you kind of mentioned it from the jump, Justin, like you've never seen a team have a must-win game in week 1. I think for some of these teams, the first 6-7 games might end up deciding things for their season. Because I think in the AFC, if you start 2-5, unless your division is garbage, I don't think you're making the playoffs. And 3 out of these 4 divisions, it's not garbage. There's one division that maybe it is, but I don't want to call them garbage more as it is just kind of a toss-up. So it's going to be critical, and that's why I kind of point out a game like Bills-Chargers, because you got 2 extremely talented teams, Herbert and Allen, 2 of the guys that are competing with Burrow and Mahomes as 4 of the top quarterbacks in the league. That would be serious playoff implications for that game, man. So those are just some of the initial games. I'm going to keep looking here, but are there any games during Rick's spiel there, maybe with one of the games that he mentioned, Justin, are there any games that stick out to you in terms of other games that people could watch out for?
I don't know about the ones he mentioned, but I'm very much looking forward to Lions Cowboys. I think it's week 16, week 17. I think it's going to be an excellent game.
Yeah.
That it's Saturday night. That is 2 teams that I expect to be competing, if not for divisions, then for wild cards. And I also very much like the Steelers-Colts game in week 15. I think that's also going to be a game that people are going to be surprised, but it's going to have major playoff implications in the AFC.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you on that one, to say the very least. There are a lot of these games as we get later on into the season. Week 15, Bills Cowboys could be an interesting one, and Eagles Seahawks. Those are 2 really good games in the 4:25 hour. Where again, you talk about playoff position. Even the Sunday night game that week that we didn't really go too much into. We kind of brushed over it when we mentioned Ravens Jaguars. Like that could be one team maybe is in the lead in their division, maybe the other. Like it's critical stuff, man. This is highly entertaining to say the very least. But there is one game I do want to get your opinion on, Justin. It's a week 18 game. Obviously, very similar to last season. They're going to wait until before to decide everything in terms of week 18 times, what games are going to be on Saturday, etc. But I want to get your thoughts on week 18 this season. Texans Colts again.
Texans Colts
week 18.
18. Why? Because they screwed me last year?
Yes. Are you going to go for a tie?
No. Colts should be a much better team this year. I think the Texans improved slightly also, but I don't think they're going to be a better team overall. I expect them to still be a bottom tier team this year, just because they were so devoid of a lot of things last year. But no, whatever.
No.
I move on, Jerg.
I couldn't get a rib out of him.
I'm not gonna root for the Texans. I'll tell you that.
Oh no! Trust me, we already know that. That's why eventually, when we finalize what our bets will be for this upcoming season in terms of who may finish last in the pick challenge, there will be a Texans related bet in your case, Justin. Best believe that. But yeah, I think for the most part we've really handled the majority of the games to talk about here. I mean, I can't necessarily name a few like right now because I mean, who knows what some of these teams might perform as, but look, I'm always a guy who loves to see the potential tank bowls as we get later in the season, and some of these teams could be bad enough where we get some tank bowls. Who knows if the Bears underperformed this season? Week 16, Cardinals-Bears is a nice tank bowl matchup there. If the Panthers aren't that great this season, Falcons-Panthers for a couple matchups late in the year. Like, it's hard to tell. It's not because I don't think some teams will or will not be good. I mean, Week 15 feels like a prime time Texans-Titans potential tank bowl game there on the schedule. So I'm hopeful we get some good tank bowl matchups, but I'm gonna obviously have to wait for the season to actually get started before we get to those. But best believe there will be updates during the season. I think I might try to make it a weekly segment of the tank bowl of the week. Once we get later into next season. But yeah, what happened?
I like that tank bowl of the week.
Yeah, it could be something, man. It all depends on how teams go, because if Stafford can't play well, man, or if maybe he has to miss time again, there's going to be some late season Rams tank bowl games that are going to be very, very fun, to say the very least. And the Rams finally have their own first round pick again, so they'll finally be able to do something with it. But I think, Justin, that just about wraps up everything when it comes to the NFL schedule, man. It was a lot to talk about, but I think we did a pretty good job. Think we did a good job. I think we've educated the people, let them know our thoughts. Think overall, Justin, think we agree, thumbs up to the NFL? Good job, schedule?
What could be bad?
Yeah. Well, Titans games are bad, but I see your point. But before we finish out, ladies and gentlemen, we do have one last segment to discuss here, but it's not about the schedule. No, ladies and gentlemen, It's a mind-blowing fact of the week. Now, yes, I'm sure you're all seeing this and wondering, what are you talking about? All the videos have been played. Rick is not here. Well, guys, best you believe the Podfather didn't bless all of you. We have a mind-blowing fact of the week to finish off the show.
With this one final note here, because I think this is important to address, if you will. And this is a bit of a mind-blowing fact here. Obviously, I'm not doing a rant podium until next week because I've got some things I have to say, but I'm going to wait a little bit. This is an interesting factoid that I thought about. So we talk in sports about streaks, the unassailable streaks. Joe DiMaggio's 56 consecutive hits. The Undertaker's 21-0 WrestleMania mark until Brock Lesnar. And, of course, Jerry being 1-0 in the pick challenge. Unassailable streaks, right? This week coming up marks week 1,650. It's a bit of a cheat, but 1,650 consecutive weeks in a row that the Washington Commanders have not shut out an opponent. Now, I know, we're in the off season, but you still got to count the weeks up there too. I think this is absolutely hilarious, and who knows, maybe now they have a new ownership group, they'll get a shutout this year. I doubt it, but you never know.
There's a fact to send the people home, ladies and gentlemen. The Washington Commanders have not shut out an opponent in well over 1,000 weeks.
That's something.
Wild, huh?
I wonder how many seasons that is.
When he comes back, we need to get a part 2 of that fact of what was that.
I feel like there needs to be more information. He just said 1,000 weeks. Like, how many seasons is that? When was the last time they shut someone out? Like,
Right.
Give me, who was it? Like, I want to know all the details.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Here's the beauty of the Podfather. You let the people know of the fact, and then going next week when he returns onto the show live, he should give us that information. So this might be a 2-part mind-blowing fact of the week here. Because Justin, be fair, because like you said, the rant podium kind of doesn't hit the same. You want to talk about things not hitting the same. The rant podium doesn't hit the same when it has to be over like the videos and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe the depth, maybe the detail of that game, of that last Washington shutout win, it may not hit the same over, and we'll get it next week.
We'll see.
Let's give the Podfather credit, and let's hope that next week will be a fun one. And yes, next week, ladies and gentlemen, because this week has come to a close. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Obviously, we had a lot to talk about, a lot of NFL schedule stuff, had so many games to cover. And like I said, I think we did a pretty good job. And look, man, I'm excited for the season. I think there's going to be a lot of games to look forward to. We're going to have our pick challenge. We're going to have the season previews that come a little bit later on in the summer. But more importantly, what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to try to figure the hell out what we're going to do on this show to pass the time. And you're going to want to join us here in this summer, what should be a fun summer here on the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, where the motto of the show and what we always do on a weekly basis is we have fun, we talk football, and we like to cause just a little bit of chaos. And with the content now coming a little dry from the NFL side, we have to make up our own stuff, Justin. Oh, I think the chaos will be a-coming, and you're going to want to join us on a weekly basis for that. Thank you all so much for joining us this week. As always, we'll see you guys next time.